In 1942, during World War II, Nazi anti-Semitism began infiltrating Holland. In an attempt to escape the German clutches, Margot DeWilde tried to flee from Holland, but was caught and sent to the Nazi concentration camp Auschwitz. In the 1950s, the People's Republic of China entered Tibet and has remained there since. The communist regime has squelched the culture and Buddhist religion of the Tibetan people and has maintained an atmosphere of blackmailing, informing, and fear. Throughout China's control of Tibet, the monks, nuns, and Tibetan people have held many demonstrations and uprisings against their occupation. Dorjay Sakya lived in Tibet throughout the uprisings of the late 80s and early 90s. He still has family members there today. In 1975, the Vietnam War ended, and the U.S. soldiers returned home. The retreat of these forces left the Hmong people, who had helped the U.S. in their fight against North Vietnam, vulnerable. The Hmong soldiers and civilians found themselves being persecuted by the Vietnamese and Laotians because of their assistance to the U.S. Yer and Nhia Lee fled with their family from Laos. It took them over a decade to reach U.S. soil, away from persecution.
I think we'll have you go first, and then maybe your mom second, then your dad third.
Okay.
Okay. And what we want you to do is just have fun. You don't have to be thinking of anything that'll come much later. And just each of you, you'll take up about a third of the canvas and maybe just put it in different places. And then your mom will kind of put about a third of the color. You don't have to cover up all the white spots.
Nhia Lee was recruited by the CIA to become a soldier and then a sergeant in the Vietnam War, fighting on the side of the United States. His main mission was to prevent North Vietnamese soldiers from penetrating the South. After the Vietnam War ended and the American soldiers left, Laotian and Vietnamese soldiers persecuted the Hmong people for helping the U.S. The Lee family attempted to flee from Laos to Thailand by crossing the Mekong River. The Vietnamese and Laotians stopped them and made them turn back for Laos. In an attempt to stave off further persecution, the Lee family, along with several other Hmong families, decided to live in the jungles and try to escape from Laos at a later date. They lived there from 1975 to 1979.
If you haven't lived in just try to survive by living in the jungle, it's very hard. You don't know what it's like. There's no food. It's very sad. It's very depressing. There's no clothes. Just the clothes you're wearing on your backs. The scariest part was starving, because the guns that they had on their back was the ones that the Americans gave them, and they didn't have any more bullets, so they were saving the bullets to protect them rather than hunting for food.
Okay. Yeah. Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened here?
Oh, my mom was just drawing a little girl that was just left behind the village when the village was being sacked by the Vietcongs.
While in the jungles, the Vietnamese attacked. Everyone had to run and hide from the soldiers. There was a little girl who was crying and was too young to understand that everyone needed to be quiet. They had to leave her behind so she wouldn't endanger the rest of the group. No one ever saw the little girl again.
We wanted to put this in a picture. It's a child left behind. And we want you to decide whether you want the smaller picture or the bigger picture and where. Do we want it to be sideways, vertical,
No.
small, or big?
So, that's okay, good.
That's one. Here's one answer. You like it right there? Okay. She likes it there.
Yes, yes, it did.
I can ask her why.
Yer sees these red lines as the timeline of their journey, and the little girl who was left behind happened at the beginning of their story. So Yer placed the drawing of the little girl towards the start of the timeline.
I think they like it like that. They want both of them?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see where the other one goes. Let him decide.
Cái mới chở lột hạ lòng mình nó na qua na cho lên nọ na.
Well, my dad likes it right there.
Okay. Lauren and I made some scribbles, and they're fragments of nothing. It's almost like a Rorschach test. First, I'd like you to pick out which one interests you the most, and then of the one more interesting, then stare at that until you start to see something, okay? And for me, I already got one. For some reason, I'm looking at this one a lot.
I keep looking at that one.
Which one are you looking at? That one?
That one, and then that one in the corner.
Okay.
Same here.
Okay.
Mine's a bit incomplete, but maybe it'll go somewhere. It's this one, and it's a symbol of something. It looks like a symbol that I would see on something, but it's not a negative symbol. I
Okay.
don't know what the symbol would represent, but if the lines were darker and it was more pronounced, or maybe even larger.
You like it aesthetically as a symbol.
Yeah.
But we have to tie it to an experience now.
Yeah.
Is there any experience that this reminds you of an object?
The shoot of a plant.
A what? A shoot of a plant?
Yeah. The
Um,
root.
the root, how do you see that?
There. Here, this is the root.
And
And then somewhere here come the new sprouts off.
so this is the root.
Yeah.
And this, so what's on the ground? Where's the ground?
Yeah, there are.
Right here?
Yeah,
Are these the start of new sprouts?
there, yeah,
So this is a root
yeah.
with new sprouts. Is there any experience that you had with
The wildflowers or the wild grasses, which we picked in order to have some food.
Okay. And did you eat the roots or just pick it out?
No, we
to
picked it only the top.
on the top, and
Yeah.
so something like this was left behind.
But it was something which was there.
This is how we stopped. We found our symbol. What I'd like to do is have Margot have you draw this on that. Copy this.
Don't be afraid.
And the other people can help. If
I don't have much fantasy anymore.
no, this is
It's okay.
Copy the root
You just copy that as best as you can.
as
It'll be
big as you
fine.
can on that canvas. Okay.
As big as you can. I think
You
it
can do
needs to be
standing
big.
up, okay? I like the idea of the root and then that diagonal maybe being the ground. I'm gonna have you do the diagonal, but I'm gonna have Margot do the root. We want you to make it as big as you can, like from top to bottom.
And you can go over it.
Yeah, go on, go after it. She didn't even look. We did that without looking, from memory.
But then in Holland it started in 42 that the Germans made themselves noticeable. they involved rules which were not the Dutch rules. Everybody had to come to the city hall and get an identification paper. It was a little bit like our driver's licenses. And as Holland was always a very free country, people were registered into religions too. Of course, the Jewish people had given Jewish, Catholics, the others, it didn't make any difference. But the Jews got their paper with a big red J on it. That was the first bad rule which the Germans put in, because that way, if they caught someone or blocked off a street and had everybody show their papers, they could pick up the Jews right away.
Now, there was a lot of images while you were telling your stories when you talked about big red J that was on the papers.
And I got the picture.
And you have that, and I could easily see us making a big J, a big red J.
Red.
How do you see the J in terms of, we'll get everybody's opinion on this, in terms of size?
I see it small, like as small as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, you might want to... Oh, so it makes it just draw it in as about where it is when we look at it.
People came out on the street again. And at that time, I was about to open my little shop. It was early in the morning, so I couldn't open it. The whole market was closed, so I was able to participate in there. We started throwing stones to the Chinese vehicles, and they were like trucks had a high wall on the sides. They were shooting from the trucks. Then I stood in one corner and started watching, and all there were monks and nuns and laymen, or army started shooting. So I remember there was a big construction going on at one corner of the street, and all the people went inside there, inside that construction building. It wasn't finished, it was under construction, and they started throwing tear gas? Yeah, tear gas, and everybody couldn't open their eyes because it started right in front into your face. So nobody was able to open their eyes, and I was watching all this from one side of the street, and when they couldn't open the eyes, they were hiding their face like that, and then armies came down and started throwing big bricks. We don't really have bricks, we have rocks. Our houses are built with big rocks. So I was throwing rocks at them on big rocks. These are like probably 10 to 20 pound rocks they were throwing at people. People were shouting, don't kill people from the back. I was shouting too. So later Chinese, because they couldn't really stand up, they were all wounded, the Chinese army went and took everything. Like they twisted their arms and then threw into the truck. Some of them, like two armies would hold from the hand to hold the leg, throw into the truck like animals. It was very, very painful experience. I can never forget that scene.
Yeah.
That throwing the big rocks at people, you know, on their face, on their head, on their body.
I was going to have you each pick out one of these long pieces of plastic color. One of them will represent your experiences, and the other will represent the other's experiences. Mm-hmm. And I want you to kind of weave them in and out of that fabric there, and eventually they'll crisscross, and they'll have a common spot where they meet, and that will be our central point of the artwork. Who would like to be represented by green, and who would like to be represented by red and white?
I would take the white mirror.
The mirrors, my plan, which we can change. My plan was that everybody would work the mirror in after the two colors crisscrossed.
I like bordification, and the two are too crass for me, too strong for me.
With the colors?
The two colors.
Okay, so you like the mirror.
Yeah.
So now you have a choice of which color you would like to have represent your experiences, or just as a timeline, kind of like yours is the mirror timeline now. Would you rather have red or green?
I'll go with the green because I see that's more peaceful color than red.
Therefore, the red is going to be, the rest of the group is going to have to deal with history and realize that this was part of their experiences also. If you want to play with this green thing now, let's see what you want to put it over and under, whether you want it to go this way or that way or straight. Or...
It's so strange how it glows.
Why not do it that?
Could it reflect underneath here?
Okay, if you want it to be parallel, we can do that, but just...
That means,
got it.
And then that almost makes a timeline that yours happened first and then his happened later. And we'll take that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's
I like that.
I'm gonna try something and feel free to absolutely change it, but I thought like something like, I just thought like maybe going across is just, it's too much in the vein of the other ones, and I like something that's either absolutely just different. Because it's so bold, it'd be nice if it just peaked. See, if it was cut, I'd like to stick it right under here and where just the edge of it came out. But
We can cut it right now if you want.
that would help. Alright, you guys will have to be pretty vocal if you see something you like or don't like.
I like that. Yeah, that emphasizes that something's happening that's violent because of the point.
And here are two letters which my uncle in hiding wrote to my father in hiding. But the brother of my father was hidden and was caught. And that's the last card he threw out of the boxcar.
Can you is there something, can you read that to us? Can you translate
Yeah, I can read it. Dear all, it's German. I have to translate that too. For these last greetings. We are all okay and hoping with God's help that we get through this last point of our life in Holland. We will go on as far as we can. All three of us are together. Very much thanks for all what you have done for us. Hoping to get together soon. From my father's younger brother, his wife, son, and daughter. People who found it would mail it to whatever is on here.
Oh,
The Dutch people.
yeah, okay. Well, wouldn't that give whoever it got mailed to?
No, it is not. They're not indicating too much. It could be. If it got really in bad hands, it would be dangerous.
Yeah, okay.
But this was sent to a Danish woman who lived downstairs for where my father was hiding.
Okay.
And the Danish woman was neutral.
Right. And the whole family perished in
Yeah.
Auschwitz? So that's
Yeah.
the last thing you have is this?
Yeah.
Margot and her husband tried to escape Holland. They applied for visas to the US, but received them too late.
Because they have had application going for a visa for the United States, and as you might have heard, America was very slow in providing visas for people in danger, and they did get it on the day Pearl Harbor was bombed. So there was no value anymore, it couldn't go.
The day after Pearl Harbor was attacked, the US declared war on Japan and joined the Allied forces in World War II. This meant any new visas into the US were null and void. Margot and her husband were forced to find a different way to leave Holland. They planned an escape to Switzerland.
And Pearl Harbor was attacked. And so something that happened on the other side of the world affected her ability to go to Switzerland, and had to go through this horrendous experience at Auschwitz instead. And so we decided to play this game below the ground on the other side of the world, basically. That's the implication. Pearl Harbor was attacked.
I know too, but what can go on here already?
Already what?
2 railroad tracks.
Okay, where? Which direction?
Here. They found a high German officer who was interested in making some money, and he would help us get out of Holland. We're ordered to go to the central station for the international train, which went from Holland to somewhere in Switzerland. And when we got close to the frontier, the German came in and said, well, you have to get out in Cologne, that's the first stop, in order to go to the Swiss consulate for your visas. Well, big red flag. So we innocently stepped out, and as soon as we were on the ground, got arrested by the Gestapo. Interrogated, and after 3 days, put us on a transport with other Jews, which they had collected in Cologne, to Berlin. That was the central station for the deportations. It was meant to be.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can think.
Are you still seeing things, Margot?
Well, you could see this as the two camps, Auschwitz and Birkenau.
Where? Show me how.
One Auschwitz and one Birkenau.
Up here?
Yeah.
One track to Auschwitz,
one
one
tracks.
track to Birkenau.
Okay. And now, how far away were they from each other then?
It was really on the other side of the railroad track.
Okay. Were you in both, or just?
No, I was only in one.
Just Auschwitz.
Yeah.
What was the difference between the two camps, or were they pretty much the same thing?
Very much.
What, can you explain that?
The brick buildings were better housing than the barracks, which they later built. There were hundreds of barracks. It was in the brick ones, yeah.
That's
Auschwitz.
Is Auschwitz
Yeah.
on the top?
We could do that, yeah.
Okay, so we got to have brick on top.
And then the
And what's the
And
barracks.
bottom?
there's just buildings,
Boards.
like barracks.
Boards, barracks. We can be looking for textures to represent this. We could texture this and texture that. Okay, so we have this 2 different worlds, and this is what's dividing it up.
Taken 2 rows of brick buildings, which turned out to have been the barracks for the soldiers in the beginning, before the camp was built. And as they had taken prisoners from countries over to Auschwitz, they had used those barracks to house the ones who came first. they were the ones who actually had to take part in building the other Auschwitz, called Birkenau, that was across the railroad tracks and was a big, big complex of hundreds of barracks. And when I got into the camp itself, I knew I was going to survive alone. Knew that from the minute I stepped the first step out of the train. I knew. And why have I lived that long? And I come to the conclusion there might be a reason that I'm still here.
I think so. One of the things that I had in my mind since you told your story about a month ago, that's been going through my mind, that I thought was really powerful, was when the shooting started, and there was people injured in the streets. You had this decision to make. Like,
every time I go out, in my mind I have my mom is in the home who's sick, but then when I see people on the street with and the Chinese shooting at people, I can't stop myself. I have to help them, to go.
That story just kept on over and over again going through my mind, and so I thought of this idea that maybe these bands that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be putting 3 bands across this picture, and maybe it could have something to do with that. How now when you thought of that, it was just like that, right?
Yeah. Well, I just made a choice. If I'll go to help the injured people, then if I'll be if the Chinese if I'll come into their picture, then I'll be arrested. Then I won't be able to take care of my mom. There's nobody to take care of my mom. But on the other hand, I see these injured people on the street, and then it took for probably quite a while to make this decision. But I couldn't stop myself to go and help them because people were all hurt. The blood was coming out. So, so it took for a while to make decisions. Should I go or not? But I couldn't stop myself. Then I went and helped.
Why don't we have some fun here and draw different bands and see what we come up with. You can do them with this color's crazy. You can do them with one of these things. It probably could happen faster if you grab one of these things, and it can go sideways. You know what I mean? So why don't you just kind of everybody grab a piece of paper and I'll pass these things out. Okay. In art, I believe there's no such thing as a mark that's good in itself. And I've always believed this, and I came up with this a long time ago. And so most people work on something trying to make it nice, thinking if they make this thing that they're working on nice, everybody will appreciate it. And I don't believe in that. I believe in the only reason why that mark becomes interesting is because of what it's doing to another mark. So it has to have a purpose. It has to be helping something else. So when I make something yellow in the corner, it may be talking to a purple, lighting up a purple on the other side. And I look at the yellow and I say, if I make the yellow a little yellower, does that purple on the other side of the canvas get better? And the size and amount of the yellow depends on how good the purple looks, not how good the yellow looks. Now I want you to pick out 2 that aren't yours that you think that might fit that story and why. The reasons why it could be logical or it could be illogical. So it could be just a gut feeling. So it doesn't have to have a good story behind it. Just, for example, this feels like somebody caught in between something and something else happening over there. And which other one do I like? I like this one.
Me too.
The idea of a falling. One of them fell. So, Dorjay, which two do you see?
This seems to make sense. Kind of really me, so. And also,
It's really you?
yeah, like my mother there, and
Okay.
so I couldn't make. My mother was very fragile. That's why I couldn't take part in the demonstration. So that's kind of tells my feelings too.
Okay.
I really like this one here. I like the texture of this big block. It kind of reminded me.
So, not to fill it in solidly, but to go two different directions.
It seems like many people would be represented by this. Like all the different lines represent different people coming together in that situation.
Wow.
I like that one too, because it reminded me of the door. I don't know if you said this, that you were behind a door. I mean, there was a door to your store. I guess I assume there was a door to your store, and that's sort of. And then this is sort of the chaos of what's going on outside, and sort of. I don't know. That's what we're doing.
It sounds like a lot of people like this one, but I do like the idea of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And is it possible to combine these two? How would you do it? Can you try doing it on this paper? How would you get the two masses in there? Anybody else want to take a stab at combining? You want to try it? We get another piece of paper. You can have a separate thing. Yeah, anybody else? Anybody wants to try combining those two can? This almost says it. What do you think? What do you think of this? Just having it.
Yeah.
You like that?
I like that, how that space opens up into there.
Yeah. So is this the one to do? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. We got our structure.
The top one.
Yeah, that one. Okay. See, it comes from nobody's drawing. It comes from everybody's drawing. Now the question of what colors. What's your color choices?
Well, I was trying to get something womb-like because my idea was mother, and then something that's similar to that color for sun, and then something just, this was just like humanity.
Pink is not a bad idea. Like the red is the blood. Pink is the rebirth. That's not a bad idea. What do you think? Would you like gray or pink?
Both fine. I think like she was saying about the womb.
So the pink.
For representing mothers.
Yeah. So we got our colors. Red. We used to do it in art school a long time, and an artist still do it. Put your hand over something, and the rest of the picture doesn't hold up. That's your way of testing to see if this part is playing its role. You don't know what it's contributing until you take it out. And you go, oh God, it's like setting up those things beautiful we have to have. We thought it was like baggage until we put our hand over it. We found that not only was it not baggage, it was absolutely critical that it be there. And so all the pieces have to fit that way. And it has to do visually as well as in terms of is it a significant form that affects the storyteller into going back and harmonizing with their own experience. So it has to do that. It also has to visually work with the other pieces. You came up with that idea, so. Why don't you,
Are we leaving the space then?
yeah, why don't you want to do the space?
Mallory can. She
All
can.
right, yeah.
Mallory invented the.
Do we want it in the middle or a little down? Or?
Might be kind of nice to either have it toward the top or toward the bottom, but maybe not so centered.
Unless you want to catch the yellow in the space.
Yeah, that's really nice. Try leaving some of that yellow there too, and then we'll play with it. We'll see what happens.
I found out that when I do things alone, I have conversations with myself. And I didn't realize how important those conversations were until I started working collaboratively.
What time did you go? I walked around like the aisles this morning.
Did you? I went like an 8.
What do you think, more green? Anybody have an opinion? Like that one? Okay. Dip it into this one. It's the idea the form has to develop out of like what's best for the survivor's story and what's best visually. And that's really complicated to come up with those forms. And so as you get closer to it, everybody had their role in modifying that form or trying that form.
This is my sister, and we put her at the end.
ลูกป้อนเชเที่ยลูกจะเลื่อนเนาะถ้าสิลูกขามือฉิดปากเลย
She said that she can hear and she can imagine what happened.
But she can't see.
Yeah, but she can't see. So over here is when everything comes to her.
Can you explain this drawing that you made? Now, this isn't the original drawing. This is just a copy of it. Can you hold it up to the camera and explain what you were trying to do with that drawing?
I hear my mom and my dad's stories, but I wasn't there to see it, and I don't know. I feel like very little. I don't know compared to their stories. Like I feel like I'm a little part of a huge story, which is really true.
And what about the idea of showing?
Showing the brain.
Yeah.
I feel like most kids in my generation torn between our cultures and between the American culture and my culture and between what my mom and my dad went through and what I'm going through. So it's totally different.
When he was that way, I can see the head like right in the middle because she is part of this big story. She's in the middle of it, but yet she's lost. So all these things are surrounding her, but she has no clue most of it.
Yeah.
What do you think of that idea?
It would be nice, but I don't feel like I'm in the center of the story. It's my parents' story. That's what I feel.
So maybe on the periphery, like on the edge,
Yeah.
around it somewhere.
What do you think about big?
Can you make it in 2 parts?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Like how down the middle, or?
Yeah.
Like
Like
which
almost like you see how here
Yeah.
it's cut off.
Yeah.
You see like a part of it because she's part of the story, even though she doesn't know much about it.
Okay. Let's. You want to play with it? You like the idea of it being something like that, like 2 different sizes?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to line it up with any of that stuff?
Yeah, I kind of want it like right at the edge.
Right at the edge, like
Canvas.
this, like this. The nose at the edge, and
Interesting.
At the nose. At the
touching,
edge.
like that.
Wow.
There's something interesting about these red things going right into the face, you know? Don't you think so? It's almost like action-wise or something, information going in that's red.
Who's glasses?
Those are mine. It makes me look more intelligent. Now I can give a critique. Do you like the original size?
I do like the original
I do
size.
too.
I like that the picture cut in half. So I like that idea.
So we're going to keep this part, the big part. We're going to have the small part.
Yeah, that might be interesting.
Okay, cut it right like that, so the part of the brain gets cut off.
Yeah.
Something in between the neck and the brain. So.
What do you think about it?
Oh, I like that idea. I want to see that.
Yeah, let's see
Let's
this.
try it.
What if you angle it? Yeah, more up in the blue, or closer. Yeah, that's interesting. What makes that?
What do you think?
I like it right there.
Right here?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. That's close to the center, which is the original idea. Let's try some other places. This is like a reality show. This is like in first place now. We'll see if anything beats it out.
I like
There's
that.
very nice. Yeah.
Like that there?
Because that red
Nice.
line takes
That's the
red
best
line,
of all
yeah.
of them.
Okay, so we got first place is lost.
Not
We're
only
in first
that, like,
place.
Yeah,
The
where
bandana.
the bandana and the red line.
They connect.
Yeah, okay, let's try a few more. What about?
That's intense with that red
Oh,
coming out.
that's too much, right?
Too much, yeah. That's interesting.
Really interesting.
That's really interesting.
Because like the
now.
whole red
Because
line kind of leads to the other picture.
This is interesting.
Well, there's all those
too.
pads. There's all those pads that can take.
But you know why I like this one though? You see how big the face is and how all this like line comes and then it becomes
whole
smaller.
story, yeah.
The whole story becomes and then the picture
Yeah.
itself
Yeah.
comes
And
smaller.
I like it for the opposite. Like this comes and it's like, you know, the story could take her this way or
That
this
way.
way or this way or this path, and like not all of them lead somewhere, you know. But there's one that's gonna lead her right there.
This is the winner so far,
I
right?
think
Yeah, I like it right there too. Because
Okay.
so. To me, it says a lot.
Okay. So can we tape this up then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, it looks nice. Yeah.
Now the other thing I want to do is that everybody makes that's in the room right now gets a brush and makes a little mark somewhere in a color.
Well, for some reason, I wanted to stay away from this gap. I was going over here and then I was like, I don't want to be near that gap. I kind of want to add other little blue marks now because I think in both stories, we're talking about a group of people a lot of times, even though it's individual stories. There's a group of people who was affected by it as well.
I think yellow is the color that
It stands out.
yeah, that's unique. It's the most unique color there is, and nobody knows how to handle it. And in Eastern cultures, they treat it as some sort of spiritual thing. In Western cultures, they treat it as if it's cowardly. But it has this opposite meaning depending on the culture you come. I don't attribute to either one of those things, personally, but I do realize its uniqueness, that something special is happening because it has this power, but it doesn't have this darkness like red or blue or green has. And so it doesn't have very much darkness to it, but it does have this glow. That'll help paste that in.
This is all I wanted to do. Something like this in there. Kind of strange, but.
From our conversations today, I've been thinking a lot about peace because both Margot and Dorjay mentioned an inner peace, having a sense of inner peace, and also we talked about peace in the world as far as people coming together and dialoguing and sharing stories and engaging with one another. So I mixed this color because it's just a very peaceful color to me.
In Pearl Harbor, there was this triangle on a pole, which I guess meant yield. I don't know. It relates to the triangle that you put in.
No, yeah.
In this one.
Yeah.
There's some water here. There, yeah.
Can I put the spice triangle in there?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Why don't you show Dorjay what that means? Show him on the arm.
Yeah.
When I saw the Margot's triangle, it's very, it really felt me. And I'm really sorry. So that's why I made a triangle here.
You got a Jehovah's Witness triangle now. That's what they had.
Purple?
The purple triangle.
Okay, that's good. We brought them into the picture. And for you, I want you to think of something that was an object that was very important to you, that you saw while
At that time?
At that time, that gave you kind of like some sort of positive feeling, an object that you saw.
I thought that by being registered is already a good omen. The number registration.
The number that was tattooed on her arm gave her hope
And they
that
kept-
she was going to stay alive.
Because the ones which went in the gas chambers did not get registered. They got their teeth taken out and the gold out of the mouth, and then they were shoved in a crematoria. And these were the numbers on our clothing, which we had to wear. It was a red triangle with the point down. Others had different kind of colors in the triangles, which for the Germans was right away the indication what they were. And I don't remember, we got it, I think, at the same time when they gave us the tattoos.
Yeah.
That is the number you got.
Yeah.
From that time, you were not a person anymore, but a number. We were separated from the group, put on a truck, taken to a building where we had to undress, our hair was shaved. We got a number put on our arms. When they put the tattoo on me, these were prisoners who were registered as artists. So they got an art project in putting the numbers on people's arms. And mine was a nice guy who gave me a real small number. Because others have big written numbers here or over there. I had a real small one. But I thought I would be überhohem, over smart. I went in the washroom where there was a clay floor. And I took clay and rubbed it right over it. And I almost got it out. But they caught me with it and sent somebody else out to make a new one, which was a little bit bigger, but not so bad either. But when you look real close by, you can still see the old number.
What if we traced your arm on that picture, like you put your arm on it and Carolyn traces around it, then we can actually put that.
Yeah.
Want to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I like it like this.
Let's draw it like that.
Too close to the arm. Ours was the only women's block, and next to us was the infirmary of the male camp. lo and behold, they would take people after they had worked them half to death sometimes and take them to the hospital to recuperate or being gassed from there. I was put to work by the two present nurses in that barrack room. They were too dainty to do the work they were supposed to do, and I was promoted to nurse then later, and could take care of people the best way I could. We didn't have much, but you could help them in various ways. If you had a decent position, however little it was, you still could have a little bit more privileges. I could take, when the soup was dished out in the noontime, I could take 1 or 2 more bowls of soup in, which I did, and I sent my solid food, which we got once every 3 days, in a small amount, sent that to my husband after I had learned that he was in a barrack next to us, and I lived on soup. The male nurses from that sick barrack brought our barrels of food into our barrack from the central kitchen. And from one of the guys there, I heard that my husband was in the barrack next to me. We could exchange little notes. And once he took my husband to a window in their barrack, and we had somewhere in our gated and wood-covered opening was a little slit that I could see him there. And he had arranged that to do one time. That was the last time I saw him.
You know that line that cuts through? There's the above ground, yep, and then the root. There's the grass and then the root. It made me think of putting on that same line the wall with the slit in it that divides her and her husband.
Yeah.
If this is kind of dividing, you know, I thought of like a person is here and someone's on the other side.
Yeah.
Then there's got to be a wall in here. Maybe this becomes the slit somewhere.
And also by the nurses being good to me, who had boyfriends in that male barrack. And it sounds crazy, concentration camp and boyfriend, but everything was possible there, if you knew the ropes. They took care of that my husband was not put on the truck in the morning for going to the gas chamber, and he died in his bunk a normal way.
What's the difference between dying a normal way and dying in the gas chamber?
In this way, it was more acceptable to me. He died of TB, which was, of course, created by not having enough food, but it was still a better feeling as if I would have known he had been to the gas chamber.
This kind of hat that I used to sell it. There were like group of women who used to make these hats, and I used to buy it from them. This is a ladies' hat that ladies wear. We only wear it on special occasions.
Okay.
This is for men. We put it on like this with one inside. This one.
Cool.
Great hat.
That's
Wow.
great. I've never seen it like
Yeah,
that.
and when it's really cold, then go like this way.
Yeah. Both of them are just for special occasions?
Yeah, special occasion. But men do wear it quite often, more often than the women.
So let's draw the hat and see what we come up with. I think, generally speaking, simplicity is the best policy. But we'll see. This is pretty a lot of patterns. So let's just do a hat drawing. Which one? I'd like to put one of them into this painting. before we leave? Which one do you think would be the most significant, where, and how big? Dream about one of these hats in one spot.
I can even see it on the pink.
The pink might be cool. Let's see what it looks like in the pink.
Especially if it's like I don't know what color we're thinking of, but like even like a subtle gray.
I think it's this size of pink.
Uh-huh.
Is that the one you like? Okay.
Change the
Gray,
gray.
lighter or darker?
I'd say dark.
What if we did it on the red? It could be lighter gray, right?
This is my older brother, born in the year 72. He was only 5 when he passed away, and then the Vietnamese people were spraying gas, so I guess it got into him, I guess.
While they were on the run in the jungles of Laos, the Vietnamese sprayed poisonous gas on a group of children. Their son, Yu, was one of the children who was sprayed. He coughed up blood and they tried to take care of him, but he died. All of the children who were sprayed with the gas also died. Yu was a very intelligent boy. He could speak very well. He had dreams of going to America to study and join the Air Force. He wanted to learn how to fly a plane so he could help the Americans in the Vietnam War.
When you met each other, did you ever think in a million years you'd wind up living in Minnesota, making paintings?
He said no, he didn't even know where America was. She said that they said that America is like across the ocean, but she hasn't even seen the ocean, and she doesn't even know what the ocean is. So.
The Lees wanted the painting to represent the journey they made from Laos to America. To symbolize this, they painted trees for Laos and the American flag for the U.S.
So they were just farmers. They would plow their own land and knock down their own trees and burn the fields so they could grow crops.
Before the wars and persecution in Laos, everyone lived in peace. Yer misses the trees, large fields, and lakes that make up the landscape of Laos.
When they got here, she felt relieved, we made it, we're gonna survive, and we're gonna live. It's just like what every immigrant who comes here feels like. It feels like a new beginning, and you can make it, and actually try to live the American dream.
Why don't we just start out by telling who's who here in that photograph, okay? Can you want to come up and show us where you are in that photograph? We thought it was you, this was you, but who is that?
My little brother.
That's your brother.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did was we took the house behind you.
Good.
And we slowly turned it into
Yeah.
the Tibetan temple.
Yeah.
You know. And
It's
then
nice.
that led into the traditional Tibetan army. Now this army, can you talk about the army a little bit? This is not really a fighting army, right?
But it was not really a fighting army. It was more like a army police who was able to kind of check the robberies and you know what you call it, bandits. We never really had a big war with anybody, so we didn't really have a big army. We didn't even have tanks or anything.
No, so we just had a police force.
Yeah, it's almost like military police force. Yeah.
Yeah, and that existed before the Chinese
Yep.
took over. Did they exist after too? After the
No.
Chinese? It was dissolved.
Yeah, it was dissolved completely. Yeah.
And we'll play a little game now. I'm going to make a line. Dorjay is going to continue it. You're going to continue it, and then Caroline's going to continue it.
Do the lines have to touch one other line?
No, you can do it
No?
any way you want.
Oh.
It would be nice if they bond. They can cross,
Mhm.
or they can come close to that. Actually, coming close to is a very intimate thing, so they don't have to actually join. I mean, we make up the rules as we go along. So the idea of voice division is for people to be emotionally moved and also treat these people who went through these experiences as heroes and not victims. When you're a victim, I think the media wants survivors to be victims for the rest of their lives. So that anytime they need to do a news clip, let's bring in the victim look. And so even if it's 10 years after they interviewed them last, you have to be that victim your whole life. Nobody can go on their life. Nobody can have good times. Nobody can bring up family. You always have to be the victim. And I think the idea of the positive attitude is they went through experiences unavoidably, and there's a lot of knowledge that they carry and a lot of character that they carry because of these experiences. And they went on to do other things with their life that were beneficial to themselves and the community. And to me, they're heroes. Could I do that? Could I get through that? Could I be as big as they were? And in Voice Division, we have them laughing at certain things that happen because they're human and they've moved on. And yet they're also very serious in terms of telling you what happened and how these symbols reflect the feeling that they had. We need something to put either
with that,
and I wanted it to be some sort of medical instrument. Now, you were a nurse there. Do you remember any medical instruments? And maybe you can draw a couple for me.
Well, we only had one, what you would call a primitive medical instrument.
What's that?
An ear syringe. Like the little syringes are, but then in big, this long, and that wide. And when you want to use it for ear syringe, you put water in it and then lukewarm water and rinse the ear out. In our case, we had connected a piece of, I don't know what it was, a little hollow piece, and put a needle on the end of it. And then that was the only way to give some fluid to the people who had lost too much fluid with the diarrhea.
So it would go in their veins?
No, just under the skin.
Just under the skin?
Under the skin, and somebody would give it, and another person would massage it. After going through having hair shaved and clothes taken away, and numbers put on our arms, we were taken to a series of barracks, where we were in what was number 10. It was called Block 10 later. Nobody actually knew what was going on. People were called to go downstairs by number. We were only numbers, not persons anymore. And some of them came upstairs crying, others were not. Anyway, we learned finally, after a long time, what was going on. That downstairs was the central point of the experiment of a quick way of sterilizing not wanted females and groups. In our society, we have some of those systems too, by eliminating groups of animals which we don't want, taking the propagation possibilities of mating away, and then they die out by themselves. That's what was Hitler's goal. Hitler had arranged his thoughts that way, that he thought after he had conquered all of Europe, he had only his pure Aryan race left after he would sterilize all the people. I was spared for a while because I had volunteered to work in the hospital room where we had a little outbreak of scarlet fever from one transport, and finally I was called to. Having position or not didn't matter anymore.
Did you see any medical tools that they used when they in the room below?
Well, they had the X-ray machine, and I think that syringe which they injected the fluid with was something like that ear syringe. They inserted a kind of a big syringe, but not with a pin, with a needle, but with a funnel, and brought a contrast substance into the vaginal area. Later we learned that these mixtures were different every time. They took an X-ray before they did it, and 3 weeks later they took another X-ray. And we didn't know what it was, of course, at that time. We thought, well, maybe artificial insemination. That was our first thought. We didn't think of sterilization. But it didn't work for everybody because I have 2 of the people I know who had babies.
But it can, when it did work, it could never be reversed, huh?
Well, you had a very minute chance of getting pregnant. They burned the organs. They burned the ovaries. We were not the only experimental barrack. There were many more. But in our case, there was a very dubious thing. You didn't know from one minute to the other what was happening. And when you were called downstairs for what turned out the experiment, you didn't know what it was for, what it would be, and everything uncertain. And that made the life there so hard to take, because when you get in prison, you know you have so many months, so many years to be there, and you can work towards it. We worked towards the unknown. We thought somewhere, sometimes it would end. You didn't know what, when. You lived really from minute to minute and day to day.
Should we get started? So each of you is going to get a palette that has these colors, and you can mix them with each other if you want to get dirtier colors. And if you need help, we're going to help you in any way we can, okay? We don't paint on the borders now. We just paint on the flat spots. And then we, after our talk and the paint's dry, then we'll paint out of our sections into somebody else's section. And then you paint on the borders. You paint over the borders. It's kind of like a statement of what you did, you know, and how you traveled from one place to another. Okay, so we should get started. You can pick out whatever things you want to use here. And if we don't have enough, we'll get others. So you can use brushes, you can use rollers, and these things. Anything you can find. So, Margot, this is yours. This is yours. And you can share any of these. If you run out of paint, we'll make more paint from you. Here's some water here. And this is for you guys. So you both work together. So try not to bump into each other.
It's looking like a ladder or maybe railroad track.
No, that's not, because I had done it on the other one. Railroad track. I'm trying to make bunk beds.
Sure, bunk beds. I see. Okay. How many people did they have in a room? How many people did they have in a room? 3 to a bed?
I don't believe in trying to impress people with your craft. I think any craft is only valuable if it gets to the truth, not to be worshipped in self. Craft is a tool, not an end. And so what I use, and I've used my whole life, is techniques that anybody could do, even a 3-year-old could do. And therefore, when you have untrained artists come in, they don't feel like they can't do it. At the beginning, they say, well, I'm not an artist. And I said, well, you can hold this piece of paper and move it around, can't you? And yeah, well, that's the beginning of art. Now just say when it's getting hotter and colder and when it gets more and less meaningful. What we're going to do is just so that we become part of it, each of us is going to make a move on the picture in a minor way so we become part of it also, okay? And so the whole content and art is in sequence and composition. It's like that in music. It's not the idea of the notes are bad, it's the idea of which notes and what sequence and what's the timing of them. And timing is composition, and choice of notes is composition. And when you get the right composition, the right sequence, and with no leftover parts, it moves you. What we're going to do is we're going to cross over borders. So have fun as you paint your crossing of the borders, and you can slide along them if you want as you cross. So you got to cross 2 borders, and then that's what we're going to do today, and then we'll meet in a month and a half again, something like that, okay? What we're after is the human side of it, not just the information, not gathering information. We're after, like, you kept this in your head for 60 years and didn't come out till now, but it was stored in there. And now that you're relaxed and thinking about the past and who you are today, it comes out. And it makes you human, and it makes other people relate to you, and it makes people say, it wasn't just a bunch of things that happened that go in a history book. There was a human being there, and they kept it on their mind for over 60 years, never thought of it until that day when we had that conversation. I found in my experiences, whenever you make a mark, you're concerned about this represents me or this represents in a collaboration the people made the mark. And for me to buy into that mark, it can't be like it looks nice. That's just pure aesthetic without any criteria except that you like it. That's your taste talking again. And so the reason why it has to work, it has to be many reasons on many levels why a mark works. And so the process of identifying whether this thing has enough substance to stay in the picture, that process leads to conversations about your experiences that you never knew you would bring up that came from your unconsciousness. I don't think I have to say anymore.